Oh, I think that's why. What about now? I may have forgotten to click something here in StreamYard. So I think the audio wasn't coming through here. Okay, I'm going to try to turn it off in WebEx so it's not echoing. Actually, I better leave it on for anybody who's through here. So I'm going to carry on now. Sorry for the delay. For the first part of the YouTube video, you can also turn the captions on. If you go back to watch, the closed captioning should work for the first part of the video. So thanks, guys. Thank you, everybody, for letting me know if there were issues. And I guess I will check the YouTube chat regularly as well. So I'll just have to jump back over to my Chrome stream, as well as keeping an eye on the WebEx comment box. Okay. So we've got our application up and running. So we're creating a form, and in here, we'll just put on a simple field set. Label. So I'll put on a label that says upload any file. Just turn off a few services. My machine seems to be really slow. I'm hoping I don't have to do a reboot, but it may be necessary. Then we're going to put on an input. I'm going to give it a name of file1, which matches the label above. An ID as well. And then we want to specify that the type equals file. It's not a regular text box. This is a file dialog box. Then we'll put on our submit button. So I'll leave the code up for a minute. So we've got a regular form, simple field set. So actually the only new thing in here that we haven't done before is added this type equals file attribute. So if we load this, and I'm going to load this in the browser, and I will keep jumping back over to my StreamYard window just in case anybody watching on the live stream's got questions. So if I load this file in my browser now, this is what it gives us. So in Firefox, it gives me a browse button. And when I click it, it opens a file dialog box so I can pick any file on my computer. I'm actually going to show this to you in Chrome and Edge as well, because each browser has a slightly different visual representation of the file input. So notice in Chrome, it says choose file and no file chosen. If I open Edge, I'm going to get yet another slight variation. They all work the same way, but it's something to keep in mind that what users will actually see with the file input is going to be slightly different depending on what browser they use. Obviously, I can't show you Safari without a Mac, so it's going to look a little different. So on a Microsoft browser, it actually looks like a text box, that when you click, nothing happens, but when you click, it does open up the dialog box. So slightly different UI implementations for each of these. So now let's build this upload file.php. So I'll just grab that name and copy it. That way I can be sure my next page is going to have the exact corresponding name. I'll make a new PHP file that I will call upload file. So I'll just paste in the name, and that way I can be sure the file name matches the action in my form. We'll open some PHP tags. First thing we'll do is get the uploaded file object. I'm going to create a variable called file. And we can obtain a copy through the files collection. So far we've used the session collection, we've used post and get. We are going to use files. And in this case, as our form, maybe close all the documents to the right. So our name was file1 over here. So if we use $_files file1, that will give us access to the file that the user uploaded. Now we want to display, so access and display properties of the uploaded file. The properties we want, they're listed, excuse me, in the PowerPoint slides that are here. And these are on D2L. So let's just start with something simple. Let's start with the file name. Say name is equal to, and this file object, excuse me, this is an array itself, so it also has its own properties that we would access. So we'll just print out the file name. So we'll try this out now. I want to browse to any file on my computer and upload it, and then inspect the file name. So I'll go back to my browser. I'll leave try to show both the code and the result. So I'll browse to a file on my computer. Just pick an image file, actually one of the files I downloaded last week from the material palette for our little show hide password. So it shows me the original file name, and then when I submit, I get an error. It's saying this, okay, this file1 here, this doesn't actually exist. The reason, and our name is empty. And the reason has to do with our form. So this behavior is actually expected. There's nothing wrong with our code as we've written it. There's just something missing. And what's missing is what we talked about here. So I left that out deliberately. I wanted to show you what happens when we try to upload files and our form tag does not have the encoding type attribute. So I'm going to go back to my browse form, excuse me. And inside the form tag, always critical that we add the encoding type. And we want to set this to multi-part form-data. I'm going to save that change. And go back. So I'm going to need to refresh my form to make sure that my form tag now includes the encoding type attribute, which it does. We can see it here. So now if I submit the file, right, my error goes away. We can now inspect that file, and we know, the server knows what the original file name was. So I'll leave this code up for a second in case you need it. And then in a second, I'm going to jump back to my upload page, and we want to start to inspect some of the other properties of the file. So I'm going to go back to the upload page again. Let me know if you have to jump into one of the comment streams. Let me know if you need me to go back. Okay. So we've got our name. We'll set a variable called type. And let's echo out file type. Now I want to try uploading a bunch of different documents here so that we can see the various file types. Then we're also going to have to look at the problem with this and find a better way of doing it. Okay, so I've added lines 17 and 18. I can just refresh here and resend my file. Actually, no, I guess it's going to make me browse again. So first I'll take a PNG file on my machine and I'll submit it. And this is what it tells me. So the type, it says, is an image PNG. Well, let's try uploading some different types of documents, different types of files, and see what we get. So if I browse out of this folder, maybe I'll find a JPEG. So here's a JPEG. And it gives me the type as image/JPEG. So we'll note these things because later on when we integrate file uploads into the music library, we want to allow users to upload images, but we don't want to allow them to upload any kind of document. So if they upload an Excel spreadsheet to be a musician photo, we're going to want to validate and prevent them from doing that. So image JPEG and image/JPG, those are going to be the valid file types that we're going to want. So what happens? Let's try a few other types of documents as well. So what happens if I upload, let's say, I upload a Word document. So this is actually, it's an application Office document, and that it's a word processing document. So that's what we're going to get for Microsoft Word. What about let's say a PDF? In this case, I get application PDF. Try one more. Maybe I'll find a text file on my machine and see what happens if I open a text file. Where do I have a text file? So if I upload a text file, I get text plain. So we can use the type. Now, there is an issue with this. Using the type attribute this way is not recommended, and I'm going to show you why. So I'm going to go to my pictures directory, and I'll maybe take, okay, so I have this image. Not exactly sure what it is. I have this JPEG called before. Oh, this was me several years ago destroying a bathroom in my house for a renovation. So this is a JPEG. I'm going to make a copy of this file. Paste it. Except I'm going to rename the file, and I'm going to change the extension to txt. It's actually an image file, but I'm renaming it to a different file type entirely. You know, if I try and open this as a text file, I get this. So it's not actually a text file. So what happens now when I go back to my browser? And I try to upload that file. So here's my before.txt. And when I submit, the type attribute, it just looks at the extension and says, it has a txt extension, so therefore the type is text plain. It doesn't actually inspect the file. So using this file type attribute isn't accurate, and we need to use something else instead. So I'll just make a comment here. We don't want to use type attribute, so I'm going to comment that out. Instead, we're going to use a built-in method called Mime Content-Type. And what it wants to know is, where's the file? What file is it? It includes the path. So we're going to need to, in order to use this, we're going to need to know where is the file temporarily uploaded to. And actually, I'm going to comment this out for a minute because we're going to come back. We may as well access that other property first. So bear with me. We'll come back and access the type after. At the temporary location of the file, we're going to use the built-in property of the file object called tmp_name. So this is the location in cache where the file gets stored. So let's inspect this because we need this property first in order to get the actual file type. So tmp_name, it's not camel case. This is the naming convention within the built-in PHP collection. So we're creating a variable called temp name, and I'm going to upload a file again, and we'll see where this temporary location is. So I'm going to go back to my browser. I'll upload the same file. I'll submit the same file called before.txt, even though we know it's not really a text file. So when I submit, here's the TMP name. Inside of my XAMPP folder, there's a temp directory, and in there, it will name the file and actually give it a .tmp extension. So here was the address. I'm just going to copy that for a second. I'm going to put it in a comment so we can see it. Now, what happens if I upload the same file in the same browser? So I'm going to go back and submit it again. You'll notice, even though it's the same file, same browser session, that temporary name is actually different. So each file upload has a unique spot in the temporary Apache server memory, even though I've uploaded the exact same file twice. So now that we see the temp name, we need to use this property down here. So where it's asking us, we're using the Mime Content-Type method as a parameter, we're going to provide the temporary name. So before we move the file out of cache, out of this temporary storage, we want to inspect the file type. And we do this so that, again, if we have some validation rules around what types of files we're going to allow on this page, we can do the checking here with Mime Content-Type and show an error message to the user if they've given us the wrong type of file before we upload it or we copy it or move the file to its permanent directory. Okay. So now if I try to upload this text document again, if I submit it one more time, you'll notice it shows we now see the name, the TMP name, but this Mime Content-Type, this correctly identifies what kind of file it is. It's not based on the extension. It actually inspects the file itself, and it can tell what type of file it is, irrespective of the extension. So we're going to want to use Mime Content-Type, like we have on line 25. We're always going to want to use that as opposed to using the type attribute, which can easily be spoofed because all it does is it just check the file extension. So we now know the file name, where it lives in cache, and the actual file type. Now, if I go ahead, I should go back and take my actual before.jpg and submit. And in this case, because the file is actually a JPEG, it recognizes the Mime Content-Type as being image/JPEG. We're also going to want to check the size. And we can print that to the screen as well. So now if I submit, it gives me the file size, and again, in bytes. So so you'd have to divide by 1024 to get that file size in kilobytes. If I were to go and look in my Windows directory, my before.jpg is, so 37 kilobytes. And in my browser, it gives me 37741. So close, but not quite 38 kilobytes for the file. So all of these files we've been uploading, they all will live in our temp directory, but not forever. So the last thing I'm going to do is I want to actually save the files permanently. So I'm going to make a new folder, new directory. I'll just call it uploads. So the last thing we want to do is move the file out of temp to the uploads folder for permanent storage. And PHP has this really useful method the nice descriptive name. It's called move uploaded file. And it takes two parameters. Where is the file now? And where do we want to store it? So the file name is the current location and the destination. So our file name, this is our TMP name variable. So it contains the fully qualified file path. And then our destination is going to be, so in this case, I'll use double quotes, uploads, slash, and then we'll just keep the file with its original name here. So now if I try my upload one more time, we should then see a copy of the file being saved to our uploads directory. You can see the uploads directory is empty right now. There's no little arrow here that allows me to expand it, meaning the directory is empty. But once we upload a file, we should actually get a little arrow here indicating that there's something inside that folder. So we'll try this out. Now, we're not putting any restrictions on file size, file type, anything like this. Whatever we upload is going to wind up copied to the uploads directory. So now if I submit, now my uploads folder has a copy of our image. Now, what happens if I upload the same file again? So I'll just open my directory here in Windows. So we'll go to our music library and uploads. And I have a copy of the image, timestamped at 9:52. So what happens if I go back and re-upload the same file? I guess there's three possibilities. We could get an error, it could overwrite this file, or it could give me a copy with a unique name, like a before bracket1 bracket.jpg, sort of like what happens when you copy and paste a file in Windows into the same directory. Let's try it. So now when I submit, you can see the timestamp has been updated from 9:52 to 9:53, and there's only one file, which tells you that the default behavior on the Apache server for a file upload is to overwrite. So if I don't want my file to get overwritten, then the last thing I want to do is create a unique name. So before we do this, we will create a unique name for each upload to prevent file overwriting. Unless it's the same file and session. Now there's a couple ways we could name the file. PHP does have a method called unique ID, but this isn't guaranteed to be unique. It actually uses the date and time, but it's still, if we still had two users that had the exact same date and time setting on their computer and uploaded a file with the exact same name at the same time, we'd still get a conflict. So instead of this, what I'm going to do is call session start to access the current session. And we're going to change the name. There's a method called session ID. So this will give us the ID of the user's session. And we're going to use this as a prefix. And we'll put in a hyphen. So what we're doing is we're appending on at the beginning. So if our file name is called before.jpg, it's going to become abc123-before.jpg. Now, this doesn't mean that every file is absolutely unique. So we'll see how this works. So before we call move uploaded file, we're changing from the original file name on the user's device. We're going to add the session ID and a dash in front of it. So let's see how this works. So if I upload this same file, before.jpg, and now go look in my Windows directory, here's what it looks like. So here's my session ID from the Apache server. It didn't overwrite the existing file. Now, if I upload, so let's say I upload a different file. Now you'll notice when I upload a different file in the same browser session, it still has the same session ID. That's okay. I'm not too concerned about that. So now what happens if I go to a different browser and upload one of these same pictures? So I'll jump over to Chrome. I'm going to upload my same before picture. And now if I look in my directory, I have a different session ID. So this was my Firefox upload, started with UI9 at 9:56, and my Chrome upload, I get a different session ID in front of it. So this way, my file isn't going to be overwritten. The only way it can be overwritten is if in the same browser session, the same user uploads the same file. In that case, I'm okay with the notion that they want to actually override the existing file. Now, if you wanted to, you could do something else as well. You could use a combination of, say, the session ID and the unique ID. That would absolutely guarantee your file names are unique. It also is going to make them really long. Or you may have another algorithm you want to use. I'm quite comfortable. I find using the session ID generally works quite well. So that it's not, like I said, it's not the only way you can do it. You could generate a hash if you wanted to as well, which is what some applications do. But I think for our purposes, this is a reasonable approach to it. So that was the basics of what I wanted to do with this basic file upload. So we're not really connected to the rest of our application. We just wanted to look at the mechanics. So again, the important things to note, 2 things on our form. We have the new encoding type attribute, and we have a new input type equals file in any form where we want to allow users to upload. And then on our page for processing, we're using the files collection, which we haven't used before. Within here, we're interested in the name attribute, the temp name attribute, the size attribute, and we use few new methods here. We've used Mime Content-Type that inspects the file and tells us the actual file type, regardless of the extension. We've used the new session ID method that will give us the ID for our browser session. That should be unique to every browser session. And then we've used the move uploaded file that allows us to copy that file out of its temporary upload location into and store that file permanently. Now it's 10 o'clock. So we're about due for a quick break. For anybody who's on either the WebEx stream or the live YouTube stream. Any questions before we take a quick break? If the answer is no, maybe just put no in the chat. Okay, thanks, Ryan. Okay, so what I will do, I'm going to pause the stream. I will push everything up to GitHub. So again, if you're missing anything, you'll be able to check your code. I'm going to step away, go brew myself coffee, and I will be back. Okay, thanks, Zach. I'll be back. We'll be back to resume in about 10 minutes. And I will start a separate stream, a part 2 stream for the next part of class.